Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I've just watched a video by David Wood in which he was making arguments against the Quran, and you won't believe how bad it is. Actually, worse than the usual stuff. And in this video, I'll show you how unreasonable David is and how ignorant he is, using his own sources, by the way. Let's do this. Fire intro.
So, we're supposed to believe that the Quran is from God because of its clarity and eloquence, when experts tell us that it's hopelessly unclear and not very good at all. This is where our Muslim friends jump in and tell us, don't trust the experts, trust the Dawah guys who say that the Quran is the most amazing book ever.
Actually, I wouldn't tell anyone to ask the Da'wah guys or believe the Da'wah guys. I'd actually say, yes, go see what the experts say. The problem here is that David is so disconnected from Arabic and from the field of eloquence and the relevant literature, he's got no idea who the experts are. And I'm willing to help you, David, because I actually have a list of experts in Arabic eloquence, old and contemporary, Muslim and non-Muslim, that have praised the Quran. And yes, I even have examples of Christian Arabs who have referred to the Quran as miraculous. Very briefly, here's an example of French Orientalist Mardreux, who translated much of the Quran as well as the 1001 Nights into French. And he completely agrees that the Quran is both magnificent and divine in its style. But I'll be frank, I don't know too much about Mardreux, and I'm not going to be calling him an expert simply because he has a view that is in line with mine. And unfortunately, that seems to be David's criteria. If he can use your position, then that person, whoever he is definitely an expert. But yeah, let's see what David's experts have to say.
The Arabic scholar Geert Puin, for instance, says this: the Quran claims for itself that it is mubin, or clear. But if you look at it, you will notice that every fifth sentence or so simply doesn't make sense. Many Muslims and Orientalists will tell you otherwise, of course, but the fact is that a fifth of the Quranic text is just incomprehensible. This is what has caused the traditional anxiety regarding translation. If the Quran is not comprehensible, if it can't even be understood in Arabic, then it's not translatable. People fear that. And since the Quran claims repeatedly to be clear, but obviously is not, as even speakers of Arabic will tell you, there is a contradiction.
So let's take a look at this part right here. And Orientalists, meaning there are Orientalists that disagree with Puin's assessment in regards to the Quran. What is wrong with these Orientalists? Were they lying about the Quran making sense? Are they delusional? Well, maybe Puin is a ghabi, because I can't think of a good reason for Orientalists to claim that the Quran makes sense apart from it actually making sense. So why can't someone say something like, well, yeah, well, Puin واحد غبي. So look at this, folks. I have no idea what is going on here. So I'm going to say that this is incomprehensible. But instead of the fault being with me, let's pretend that I am an expert, and this has absolutely no meaning.
The Iranian scholar Ali Dashti, in his book 23 Years, adds, the Quran contains sentences which are incomplete and not fully intelligible without the aid of commentaries, foreign words, unfamiliar Arabic words, and words used with other than the normal meaning, adjectives and verbs inflected without observance of the concords of gender and number, illogically and ungrammatically applied pronouns which sometimes have no referent, and predicates which in rhymed passages are often remote from the subjects. These and other such aberrations in the language have given scope to critics who deny the Quran's eloquence.
Hey David, I have a little gift for you. You ever heard of the alleged expert that says that the Quran is beautiful and unique and that there was no precedent for it in the earlier literature of the ancient Arabs? Its effusion from the tongue of an illiterate man with no education, let alone literary training, is a phenomenon which, in this respect, can justifiably be referred to as a miracle, or be described as a miracle. He also praises some specific chapters like Surah Al-Balad as a shining example of prophetic eloquence. And he guesses who this is referring to. Yes, it's Ali Deshti, your own source, the person that you refer to as an expert. Just to be clear, Ali Deshti does not believe that the Quran in itself is a miracle of eloquence. However, these statements clearly conflict with what David is trying to present to his audience. So, do you agree, David? Do you believe that Ali Deshti's assessment is correct? Do you believe that he's an expert? I personally don't, by the way. But do you agree with his claims? Is he only an expert when it suits you?
Notice, we're supposed to convert to Islam because of the supernatural eloquence of the Quran. But how are we supposed to know that the Quran is supernaturally eloquent when we don't speak Arabic? What our Muslim friends are really telling us is this. We either need to trust what the Dawah guys say about the Quran without understanding the evidence for ourselves, or we need to spend years studying classical Arabic so that we can perhaps find the evidence for ourselves someday.
Yeah, so let's get past all this Da'wah guys stuff. We've agreed that we're only going to be using experts when it comes to this topic. So you have two options when it comes to looking into the claims of the Quran being a miracle. And yes, the second one is definitely a lot harder. But you see, the thing is that previous physical miracles are not even accessible to you. You've never seen the sea split, and you never will. And you've never seen the raising of the dead, and you never will. Islam provides you with a miracle that you can actually access. However, again, it's not the easiest thing to do in the world, and you're going to have to spend a good amount of time studying the material. And then you have option one, which is relying on the statements of the experts in the field. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, but why should I believe in these testimonies? Well, aren't you already believing in the testimonies of those that spoke about the splitting of the sea and those that spoke about the raising of the dead? If you believe those testimonies, then why are you rejecting the testimonies of those that have claimed that Quran is a miracle of eloquence? In most cases, the claims of these classical or ancient physical miracles aren't even by eyewitnesses. They're by anonymous authors or even late authors that are allegedly quoting eyewitnesses. So folks, here's what I'm offering. The Quran is a text that came with a challenge to produce something like it. The Arab pagans of the time, instead of coming with something like it, instead of challenging the Quran, what they did was they actually converted to Islam. They changed their religion. They stopped believing in the gods they believe in. They adopted a whole new way of life. Now, folks like David might say something like, oh yeah, well, those people, those poets, they converted to Islam because they were forced to because of the wars and whatnot. And of course, in response to that, I would have to ask, which wars caused the forced conversions of Hassan bin Thabit, Abdullah bin Rawaha, Ka'b bin Malik, and Unais al-Ghifari? And then after David spends the next 15 minutes looking up those names, even though he should have come across them in the past 30 years that he's studied Islam, he'll conveniently ignore this video because he's got no good answer and would rather avoid embarrassing himself further. And to the rest of you guys, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And even the argument from literary excellence, Muhammad won very few followers using this argument. You say, well, how did Muhammad get so many followers? That's when his argument changed to, hey, join me and we'll go split up the spoils of war. We'll seize property and we'll take women captives as our sex slaves. And if you die, you get virgins in paradise. That's when Muhammad's message started spreading very rapidly.